So as we look back on 2013, we can do this as church, we can do this as individuals, we can do this as families. As a church, in January of 2013, you'll remember here that we purchased a van for Release Ministries, and it's really cool. As I just look out here, I can see the generosity that has made that happen. There's been kids who have been recently released from the detention center. They live in Bellevue now, and they can go from point A to point B to point C because of your generosity. In February, we had a Hope Sunday here where Ty Schenzel, the director of the Hope Center, was here, and we gave a very generous offering. It was thousands of dollars to the Hope Center. And it's cool here to see that you have invested in the lives of children in North Omaha. In one life at a time, you're committed to making our city a better place. In March, we had the highest participation we've ever had in a worship experience. On Easter, the last day of March, we had over 1,300 people that worshiped with us. That was a record for us. In April, we confirmed 24 eighth graders. I think there might have been a ninth grader in there as well. And one of the things we've always talked about here is what's it going to look like for us to radically invest in the next generation of Christians. What's it going to look like for us as a church to invest in families so that when these kids graduate from high school, whether they go to the military, whether they go to the workforce, whether they go to college, that spiritually they're prepared for the next step of their life. In May, we launched We Connect. You're going to be getting your next edition in the mailbox this week. It's basically just a newsletter that tells stories. It tells stories about what God is doing at the water's edge. In June, we closed on the 23.3 acres of ground on Harrison Street. You remember the capital campaign happened at the end of 2012, but we closed on the property in June. And it's going to be really cool over the next couple years to look at all the possibilities that God has for us in the future. Our permanent home is not here. It's going to be somewhere else. During that time as well, we sent 24 people to Belize to be God's hands and God's feet in that country. In July, we sent nearly 100 people, middle school students, high school students, and adults, to 2 different places. One was to Minnesota, one was to Pennsylvania. It was so cool for me to see the pictures of that and to see kids at a young age learning what it means to look like Jesus, to serve people who are hurting. In August, there was 400 of us that went out to 20 different locations, and we served the city in one day. That's an amazing day. I think every year that's probably my favorite day in the church where we do our We Serve Sunday. In September, we launched 34 small groups. That's the most small groups we've ever had. We're actually going to break the record again next week when we launch. I think it's 35 or 36 small groups. But I would say this, we're not just a church of people that comes together on Sunday morning to sing and to listen. We're also a church that gathers around tables. These can be tables in people's kitchens, it can be in basements, it can be in living rooms, it can be in restaurants, wherever it is. And people that are in small groups, they experience deep community. And this is part of what we believe Christianity is all about. We can experience the gospel through additional voices, and this is something that's going to be essential for us. And I would say if you're not in a small group yet, or if you were in one and it hasn't worked out the last year or so, next week we got a bunch of new small groups that are starting, and I would encourage you to join a small group. During that time, we also had 100 middle and high school students on Wednesday evening. We've never had that many kids before, and I think that's great. In October, we raised over $15,000 for medicine and for medical supplies for people in Uganda. The next month, we sent 12 people there, and in that generosity that you exhibited on those 2 Sundays, it literally saved people's lives. The doctors and nurses and assistants who went there, they said that people wouldn't have lived unless they would have got, this medicine for this malaria, or, these vitamins for the malnourished. We concluded our food drives in October as well. This year we set a record. We collected over 12,000 pounds of food for hungry people right here in Omaha. It's amazing to see this is happening right in our own city. In November, we had 180 kids for the first time ever on a Sunday morning. Yeah, I remember when we started at Russell Middle School, there was like a dozen kids. And in November we had over 180 kids one Sunday. And then in December we had our biggest worship experience ever. If you were here at 4 o'clock on Tuesday afternoon, you know that this place was packed full of people, both our people and people from the community. It was so cool to see all of us worshiping a baby together, knowing that this baby became a man. This man changed the world, and because this man changed the world, that our world can change as well. Now, it's been a great year. We've had a great year. There's been a ton of opportunities, a ton of really cool things that have happened. There's been some challenges as well, but it's been a great year. Now, one of the things that our staff is going to do in about 2 weeks or so is we're actually going to talk about things that we're going to stop doing in 2014. Now, don't worry, we're not going to get rid of our kids ministry. We're not going to get rid of our small groups. We're not going to get rid of our missions. But we're going to talk about things that we as a church, that we as a staff specifically, can stop doing so that we can focus more energy, so that we can become more centered and more focused on the really critical things that we believe that God is wanting us to do. Now, I'd ask you this. How has your 2013 been? You personally. What has 2013 been like for you? Now, some of you are going to say, it's been great. We had a baby. And it's the first baby we had, and that was just undescribable. I probably visited 20 to 25 babies in the hospital this year, and it's so cool to see that every time it happens. I know that some of you sent a kid to kindergarten for the first time, and that was a very interesting experience for you. I know that some of you had a kid graduate from high school. Maybe it was your first kid that graduated from high school, or maybe it was your last kid that graduated from high school, and either way, your life changed, didn't it? I know that some of you got married this year. It was your first Christmas as a married couple. I know that some relationships also ended in 2013. I know that some lives ended in 2013. I did enough funerals to have figured that one out. I know that some of you received news in 2013, both good news and not so good news, that literally changed your life forever. Maybe it was a call from a doctor. Maybe it was something that happened at work. Maybe it was something that happened in your family. But you received some news that changed your life forever. Now, I would say that your 2013 was probably a lot like many other people. It was filled with a whole bunch of good stuff. But there was also some challenges and some difficulties as well. Now, what we're going to look at, instead of doing like the sermon on like resolutions and how to set goals and keep goals. Now you have these things. Like some of us have probably already thought about this. I'm going to try to eat a little bit healthier. I'm going to try to exercise a little bit more. I'm going to try to spend less and save more. I'm going to try to maybe work a little bit less and spend some more time with family. I'm going to try to stop wasting time and use that wasted time to really do things that I've wanted to do. I mean, whatever it is for you. We set these resolutions, we set these goals. Now, do you think that 365 days from today that we're all going to come back here and be a lot thinner? Or do you think we're going to respond to our email on time? Or do you think we're going to in some cases, yes. And if that's your goal, if that's your dream, I'm the biggest supporter you got. Go for it. There's possibilities. You can do this. Now, if you got some goals, if you already go for them, do it. These are probably good things that you've wanted to do for a long time. But what I want us to look at this morning as a church, as a collection of people, is what if we stopped doing certain things in 2014? What if we just cut some things out? What if, it was Amber and Benjamin and David and I on Friday, we had this great day. It was a great day at the Finstead household. We cleaned our garage. This hasn't been done for 5 years. And the garage, it was not clean, but it was 8 hours later, between three of us and one of us kind of, the thing was clean. Like, you could see the cement floor. All this stuff was on the shelves, and we threw a bunch of stuff away. Now, I don't know about it, but it felt good. Decluttered, simplified, fairly organized. It was an awesome experience. Now, what if in 365 days, you can actually say, okay, things are simplified a little bit. Things are decluttered a little bit. Things are starting to be organized in the way that God intends for them to be organized. So here's the list. Things that we're going to stop doing in 2014. Number 1 is stop neglecting your relationship with God. All right, stop neglecting your relationship with God. The psalmist says in the first psalm, Psalm number 1, verse 2, they delight in the law of the Lord, meditating on it day and night. Okay, so it's important to hear that phrase. They meditated on it day and night. What they stopped doing was neglecting their relationship with God. They meditated on God's word day and night. Now, here's what happens. Here's what happens when we stop neglecting our relationship with the Lord. In verse 3, it continues, they're like trees planted along the riverbank, bearing fruit each season. The leaves never wither, and they will prosper in all they do. So the promise is that when we stop neglecting our life with the Lord, what's going to happen is we're going to experience fruitfulness in our life. Now, we don't know what that fruitfulness is going to look like. But God's promise is when we meditate on His word day or night, when we stop neglecting our relationship with the Lord, then fruitfulness starts to happen in our life. Now think about this. You can use God's wisdom and resources. Use God's wisdom, use God's resources to heal you and become the person that God has created you to come. Now I'll tell this running story just for Mike. I didn't do this at the first service, but we'll do it at the second service. I ran into a guy that I used to run with like 4 days a week. This is like 4 or 5 years ago when I was running marathons before my little injury. And I had not seen this guy. I think I'd seen him once from afar, but it was at Fairway, the grocery store right by our house, and he came up to me, and it was really weird to see him. Like, we used to spend 4 days a week together, an hour to 2 hours a day. It was just the two of us where we just talked. And, during this time, Mike, he was probably my closest friend. I listened to him, we laughed, we talked about life, we just spent time together. Now, after 4 years of not seeing him, he was telling me about all the changes in his life, and I was absolutely amazed. I was telling him about some of the changes in my life, and he was amazed. Now, this relationship had been neglected. There was no more power in this. No, it wasn't. We didn't end on bad terms. It's just I wasn't able to run with him anymore. So the relationship, it functionally ended. There was no power in this relationship because it was neglected. Now, the most important relationship we have is with God Himself. The relationship that will never let us down. The relationship that never has to end. Now, when we neglect this relationship, we lose the power in this relationship. We lose the potential in this relationship. We lose the possibilities in this relationship. Now, this is not rocket science. You don't have to go to seminary for a long time to figure this one out. The psalmist gives us, one way we can do it. We meditate on the scriptures day and night. I think the Bible it's a lot like a thermos. If you're wanting to start something like this at the first of the year, I would say just pick up one of the 4 Gospels, like Matthew or Mark or Luke or John in the New Testament, and just start to read. And you'll find that God in the Bible is like a thermos. Like, I don't understand the engineering or the physics behind this, but when you dump cold water into a thermos, what does the thermos do? It keeps the water cold. When you dump hot fluids into a thermos, the thermos keeps the fluids warm. It just always knows what you need. Now, I believe the Bible is like this as well. If we read through some of these Gospels, and you don't have to spend hours a day doing this, if we just spend minutes, it's going to be like a thermos. God is going to speak to us. God is going to know what we need. So we read the scriptures. The next way is to pray, and there's no formula to do this. There's no magic. It takes discipline. It takes perseverance. It takes patience. Prayer, it takes faith more than anything else. And your prayer life does not have to be anything more complex than this. God, I'm struggling in my relationship with this person, and I want wisdom on how to do my part to make this better. Or it might be something like, Lord, I have this opportunity that's in front of me, and I don't know whether I should take it or not. And just speak to me and put people in my way that will speak to me, that I can make your best decision. Or maybe it's like, Lord, I'm just not feeling the best. I'm always tired, and my back hurts, and I just want joy to return to my life. And your prayer life does not need to be any more complex than that. But the first thing that we really have to do to experience the blessings that God has for us in 2014 is to stop neglecting our relationship with God. The second thing that we have to stop doing is stop holding on to your past failures and hurts. And we have to stop. We have to stop this. I mean, unless you want to continue to be hurt, unless you want to continue to be defined as a failure, we have to stop holding on to our failures and our hurts. Now, let's go to Philippians chapter 3, verses 12 through 14. Here Paul says, I don't mean to say that I have already achieved these things, that I have already reached perfection. So Paul is saying, I'm not perfect, but I press on to possess the perfection for which Christ Jesus first possessed me. No, dear brothers and sisters, I have not achieved it, but I focus on this one thing. Now listen to this. Forgetting the past and looking forward to what lies ahead. So Paul says we forget the past, we look forward to what lies ahead. I press on to reach the end of the race and receive the heavenly prize for which God, through Christ Jesus, has called us. Now, we all have things in common in this room. We've all been hurt. We've been hurt by people who don't love us, and we've been hurt by people who love us. We've all experienced brokenness. Physically, emotionally, relationally, and I would even say spiritually. We've all experienced brokenness in our lives. Now, we have to hear this as well. Your past will not define your past. Your past is not going to define or predict your future unless you let it. So your past, your brokenness, your hurts, these are not going to predict your future unless you let it. So stop letting it. Let's just say in 2014, instead of lamenting over past failures and hurts, we're going to learn. We're going to learn from our mistakes. We're going to learn from the mistakes of the others. We're going to learn from our response to bad things that happen. And we're going to do everything that we can do, just like Paul. We're going to do everything that we can do to make tomorrow better than yesterday. There's a woman that I talked to in my office probably 5 or 6 years ago. This was when our offices were at Faith Westwood. And she came in and talked to me and told me that I was actually going to do her wedding. And she had told me that her fiance had broken off the engagement. And I didn't know this, but this had happened to her about 2 years before that as well. Now, I looked at her. I was looking at her in the eyes, and I looked at her face, and I could see the tears welling up in her eyes. I could see the pain on her face. And I'm thinking to myself, this woman has got a long road to recovery in front of her. She's not going to just go out and find a boyfriend and all her problems are going to go away. She's going to have to learn how to trust again. She's going to have to learn how to practice vulnerability so that she can, experience intimacy. We talked over the next couple years. I would see her in church, and every once in a while, she would come in. And about 1.5 years ago, she called me up and said she's going to try it again. He asked her to marry him, and she said yes. And it was in April, I think. It might have been early May at Indian Creek Golf Course. She walked down the aisle with her dad escorting her down, and I couldn't help but smile. Part of the reason I smiled was because these two people who loved each other were getting married, but the reason I was really smiling is because I saw God's healing in this process. Because I remember that day in my office when things were absolutely hopeless for her. And to see that she was able to put this brokenness behind her and move forward to the future that God has in front. It was an amazing experience to see this over the course of 5 years. Now, if we're in this place of being hurt right now, if we're in this place of brokenness, notice that healing does not always happen overnight. Sometimes healing, it just takes a long time. But what you get to do is you get to either start or continue the process wherever you're at. What Paul says is what we do is we put our past behind us. We no longer let our past define us. We learn from our past, and we move forward. We press on. The word that Paul uses there is press on. We just keep pressing on to the future that God has for us. Now, one of the things that she and I talked about is this guy hurt you. He basically told you that you weren't good enough. He said things to you that didn't make you feel the way that you wanted to feel. Now he hurt you, didn't he? He goes, yeah. Now the choice is going to become hers. Is she going to let him continue to hurt her? Or is she going to try to put this behind her? Is she going to learn, and is she going to move on? Now think about this in your life. There's people who have hurt you. And even as I'm saying this right now, you're probably thinking of some people. Now, you have a choice. And the choice is, are you going to let them continue to hurt you? They may have totally moved on. To the next relationship, to the next state, to the next job, to the next neighborhood. But sometimes we still harbor bitterness and resentment, and we allow them to keep hurting us. So what we do from this point forward, starting in 2014, is we stop holding on to our past failures and our past hurts. We're no longer going to be bitter. We are going to be better. We are no longer going to be a victim. We're going to be a victor. All right, next one is stop pleasing people. We're going to try to stop being a people pleaser. I did a whole sermon on this back in, I think it was September or October, so we'll just give the Cliff Notes version right now. But Galatians chapter 1, verse 10. Now listen to what Paul says. Obviously, I'm not trying to win the approval of people, but of God. If pleasing people were my goal, I would not be Christ's servant. Now, one thing we have to know for all of us who are people pleasers, and this is something that I deal with very regularly. For all of us who are people pleasers, we cannot fully and continually please another person. It's not possible. Because you're not perfect, and the person that you're trying to please is not perfect either. So one of the things we have to figure out is we cannot let an imperfect person's perception about us determine our self-worth. Now you think about that. How many times have you tried to please a parent? How many times have you tried to please a supervisor at work? How many times have you tried to please a child? And we don't fully please the other person, therefore we're not good enough, therefore we don't have value, therefore it's going to be a lousy day. Now, it doesn't, I would say this, listen to people, learn from people, love people radically, but don't let another person determine your happiness in this world. Because what you're doing is you're allowing another person to control you. Now, there's nothing wrong with trying to serve people. There's nothing wrong with loving people radically, but the problem is we're letting an imperfect person, determine what our day is going to be like. I remember when we started off in ministry, my first job where I received a paycheck was at St. Andrew United Methodist Church in Marietta, Georgia. It was the first time I was ever on the paid staff of a church, and I was also a graduate student at Emory University at the time, and one of the classes we took, and I'm so grateful that we took the class, was supervised ministry, where all of us who have similar positions, we would have a class where there's 6 of us, and we'd have a professor and a pastor who would kind of be our mentors. And So they got 5 or 6 of us who had our first job in the church. We were all working with youth at the time. We had like these sessions and processing groups, and it was really interesting. Like on the second or third time we met, we were all new to our church, like in the last month or so. I remember the first woman, she's talking, well, I don't think they like me. I worked really hard, but they didn't seem to like the lessons. The adults complained, the kids didn't care. I guess I didn't realize I was signing up for this. Then it was the next guy's turn, and he says, yeah, they don't like me either. They just talked about the guy before and how I wasn't that person, and I didn't please everybody, that's for sure. And it's like my turn. Amber remembers this. Yeah, they don't like me either. They like the guy before me a lot as well, and I'm not that person. I don't talk like a Southerner. I definitely didn't please everybody either. And then, this isn't about ministry. This is about life in general. The professor and the pastor are like, okay, you guys are never, and women as well, y'all are, actually they were in Georgia, so they said y'all, are never going to please everybody. In your churches, it's going to be impossible if you have more than one person in your church to please everybody all the time. You just can't do it. So stop trying. Now think about that in your schools. Think about that in your workplaces. Think about it in your families. We just can't do it. It's not possible, so stop trying. It's like getting on a treadmill, and the treadmill just goes faster and the incline gets higher, and pretty soon we're working so hard and it's still futile because we're trying to please imperfect people. All right, the next one is stop being so ungrateful. Paul says in 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verse 18, he says, give thanks in all circumstances. It doesn't say give thanks when things are going well. Give thanks when giving thanks seems to be the appropriate thing to do. He says, give thanks in all circumstances, for this is the will of God in Jesus Christ for you. Now, envy and jealousy are very cruel criminals. What they do is they steal the joy that God intends for us. Every moment we spend practicing envy and jealousy, what we do is we miss the beauty of life's many blessings. And we have many of them. One of the things I like to do when I'm going through a tough time, I just, everyone at the office knows that I do these sorts of things, but I just get out a blank sheet of paper and a pen, and I write down just all the things that I'm grateful for. If life gets really tough, I just look and I really count my blessings. I've done this for years, and it moves me from the place of fear to a place of gratefulness. Now, I'll say this. Take a look at your life. I don't know what your number is, but probably 80% of your life is very good. Maybe it's 90%. Maybe it's 95%. Let's just say the number is 90%. 90% of your life is very good. Now, 10%, there's some troubles. You got some anxiety here. There's some dysfunction here. There's some problems over here. Now, which of these do you focus on more? The 90% that's going really well, or the 10% that's not going so well? Well, I think most of us spend 90% of our time thinking about the 10% that isn't going the best. And God says, stop doing that. What I want you to do is be grateful. This is my will for you, to be grateful for everything that I have blessed you with, even on this day. Now, the last one is stop not living in the present. Psalm chapter 118, verse 24 says, this is the day that the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. This is the day that the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. Today is the day. Like the verse that Benjamin read a little bit ago. The verse that Benjamin read a little bit ago. He says, you can plan, you can dream about what's going to happen tomorrow. We're going to go to this town and we're going to make a profit. And then after that, we'll go here and we'll do these things. And James is like, don't do this. This is futile. It's like predicting the wind. Today is the day that we live. Now, I think there's just such a temptation for us to live in what might be the future for us, to live in some kind of dream that may or may not ever happen. But we're missing out on today. And I also think in 2013, soon to be 2014, that we can live other people's lives. There's never been a time in the history of humanity where it's so easy to access the information that we access. I talked about this back in October, I think it was, but with social media, whether it's like Instagram or Twitter or Facebook or something like that, and this was even, happening to me last night. I was working on this message a little bit, and I went on Facebook because I heard someone had sent me a message. I looked, and one of my friends was in the Old Market with his wife hanging out. I mean, that's pretty cool. He's in the Old Market hanging out. And then I looked at another friend, and he was in Jacksonville. He's going to the Gator Bowl. And I'm on my couch under a blanket writing a sermon. But what we did is we talked about this back in October. What we do is I was comparing my ordinary life with someone else's highlight reel. It becomes so easy not to live in the present. It's become so easy to compare what's ordinary to someone else's highlights. It's so easy to dream about what may or may not happen in the future, but God gives us a gift, and that gift is today. Now, in 2014, our next sermon series is going to be called My One Word. The books are going to be here next week. It's a brilliant little book. It's very easy to read. You can read it in a couple hours. One of the things we're going to talk about in 2014 is not how to set effective goals and have those goals come true. One of the things we're going to look at in January, both in worship and in our small groups, is just to choose one word for 2014. And that will be our word that helps us focus. That is going to be our word that helps us center. That is going to be the word that we pray that God does something in us and through us. Now, in our newsletter that's going to be coming out this week, we have a bunch of people that we've asked to predetermine what their one word is going to be. So I just want to share a few of them with you. And this, is the next week rolls out. We're going to be looking at what it means to just have one word. So one of our women has chosen the word patience in 2014. Instead of a specific goal, she's just chosen the word patience. And what she prays in her life is patience. Now, here's what she said. I want patience in God's timing. I want patience with myself. I want patience with my husband, children, family, and friends. I want patience with strangers. I want to slow down, and I want to demonstrate patience. Imagine the world if everyone was just a little bit more patient. So as far as 2014 goes, that's one word. But you can see that one word is going to be critical for this one woman. One of the men, he wrote in and he said, focus. That's going to be his word for 2014. He says, I need to avoid distractions from the important things that matter. I want to focus on being more present with family and friends. I want to focus on being more engaged when at work and in study. I want to focus on being more consistent in my time spent with Jesus Christ. So you can see if this man is able to live out focus in 2014, that his life is going to change. There's a woman who chose the word love. I love her narrative that she wrote. She says, my one word is love. I'm going to love God. I'm going to love myself. I'm going to love my husband. I'm going to love my children. I'm going to love my family. I'm going to love my friends, my neighbors, and my enemies. I'm going to love unconditionally and expressively and strengthen those relationships further through the love of all people and all that is good. The last one I wanted to share with you is a very short one, and he says, my one word in 2014 is peace. And then he says, I want to find a deeper peace in my heart that is anchored in what is even going to be a stronger relationship with God. So I really want to encourage you over the next couple weeks, and we're going to start this next week, and we're going to look at how to determine what our one word is going to be. But I want you to begin praying about what your one word is going to be for 2014. We're going to look at this on Sunday mornings, and we're going to look at this in our small groups as well in January. So let us pray.